afternoon with by the lead sponsor, Councilor Lydia Edwards, as well as other colleagues. Not yet, but as they arrive, I will certainly make sure to recognize them. This public hearing is being recorded and live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv. It will be rebroadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, Verizon Fios Channel 964. We will take public testimony at the end of this hearing. If you wish to testify via video conference, please email shane.pack, shane.pac@boston.gov to sign up. When you are called at the end of this hearing, please state your name and affiliation or residence, and limit your comments to no more than just a few minutes to ensure that all comments can be heard. You may also submit written testimony by emailing ccc.education@boston.gov. Today's hearing is on docket number 1009, order for a hearing on Boston Public Schools bus transportation reliability. Unfortunately, due to scheduling conflicts, I will be leaving this hearing early unless we get through it in an efficient manner. But someone from my staff will continue to be tuned in, and I will continue to take notes as I can on my own and my staff on my behalf. I'll also make sure to watch any of the remaining of the hearing once it's uploaded and made available. I'd like to welcome Councilor Edwards as the lead sponsor to make opening remarks, and then pass it on to the Boston Public Schools for their presentation. Councilor Edwards.
Thank you very much, Councilor Sabi-George. I really appreciate you setting up this. I know how incredibly busy you are as Chair of Education, but I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of people in my district and a lot of my colleagues who not only had concerns voiced to them during the first week of school about children, BPS kids being able to get to school on the bus, but throughout the month of September, honestly, the concerns continued. And we had many people still reach out to our office from East Boston in particular, folks whose kids were getting to school, but then coming back from school was a challenge. I've heard from everybody from working parents to the brothers and sisters of people who are BPS who work in my office. One of my other staffers is also a parent. And honestly, at all levels, we found that this was different than other years. I know, and every year that I've been a city councilor, the beginning of the school year and busing has always got a little bit of a ironing out of certain issues, but this year felt different. This year is actually the first time I've actually had a hearing about it because of the amount of complaints that we received. I do want to thank the superintendent and Delverne for when we did voice one particular issue with a parent in East Boston that was resolved. But this isn't about the one for one. This is about the system and making sure that we have things in place for folks to feel that they are being heard and the issues are being rectified. I'd love for when BPS speaks to talk a little bit about the working group. I think the superintendent has set something up. I'd love a status on that working group. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the bus tracking system. Is there movement to make it an app so that it's real time on people's phones? I know online there is some real time information. I think we also invited today, I don't know if they're on the screen, but is the union as well, and I would love to hear about the status of people being able to drive or driver status, what our shortage is or isn't, and also as well as when it comes to bus monitors, what the status is of their our ability to recruit and maintain and have them. And I think a lot of this conversation, it will be very efficient, I promise, Councilor Sabi-George. It is about a check-in and understanding of where we're going to go from here. So thank you very much for being here today, and I appreciate all of everyone being here.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. I'll now turn it over to the Boston Public Schools. I'm not sure if Delverne or who'd like to introduce your team and get started with your presentation. I'm leaning on Del because Del generally has all of the answers as it relates to the transportation space. And Indy, you're on mute. Try it here. Nope, can't hear you, Indy. Maybe it's, I don't know if it's your laptop. Maybe hooked up to your headpiece or something.
Hello.
There you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
And I tried to prep like an hour before.
We've only been doing this for 2 years now. Go ahead.
Imagine.
Welcome.
Sorry about that. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Indy Alvarez. I am the Chief of Operations for Boston Public Schools. And today I am here with Delaware Stanislaus, the Director of Transportation, Dan Rosengard, Assistant Director of School Support and Customer Relations, and Varsha Ramsey, Special Assistant to the Director. The transportation team will be leading the presentation this afternoon. I would like to say that despite the challenges at the start of the school year, I am really proud of the work this team has done and continue to do to provide quality service to students in the city of Boston. And because we want to stay on the schedule, and I want to make sure that each and every one of you can hear what Delaware and her team has to present. I'm going to turn it over now to Delaware and Stanislaus.
Thank you, Indy. As Indy stated, my name is Delaware Stanislaus, the Director of Transportation, Boston Public Schools. I am happy to be here today to present alongside two of the leaders on the transportation team. I would like to kick off the presentation with an overview of Boston Public Schools transportation services, which will serve as a starting point to go over the steps needed to ensure a successful school reopening, as well as the challenges faced this year, a deep dive into our performance metrics, and in summary, our plans for continued improvements. Thanks, Varsha, for the slides. The Boston Public Schools Department of Transportation transports 22,000 students daily. This includes 5,700 students who receive door-to-door transportation and 1,600 students who require bus monitors. Our buses perform over 3,000 daily trips, transporting students to over 230 schools within the city of Boston and outside of Boston. This includes approximately 5,000 non-BPS students who attend 105 non-BPS sites. This represents about 23% of students transported and 45% of our sites served. Our bus fleet consists of 720 total buses. Of that 720 buses, we started the school year with 649 buses scheduled for daily runs. After route consolidation efforts, we are now running 621 buses daily. We have 681 active bus drivers, as well as 180 currently on leave or inactive. Next slide. There are several key elements required for transportation to have a successful school start. Our on-time performance and overall readiness are dependent on success factors relating to these key elements. Next slide. First, and one of the most important elements of a successful school startup is timely receipt of accurate enrollment data from Boston Public Schools Welcome Services. This includes non-BPS enrollments. We also rely on accurate and prompt transportation eligibility data from the Office of Instructional and Information Technology, and transportation-specific IEP and 504 plan data from the Office of Special Education. This data dictates fleet size and driver and monitor hiring needs. During the summer months, our routing and scheduling team must complete home-to-school routing, review transportation change requests, and complete fleet scheduling and consolidation. In order to complete this work, student data must be received with adequate lead time and sufficient personnel must be available to route and schedule. Recruitment, hiring, and training of bus drivers is also key to the ability to run the operation. Successful completion of the work depends on accurate projected needs, successful recruitment, retention, and management of drivers on leave. Next slide. To prepare for the start of school, the transportation team must recruit, hire, and train bus monitors to meet projected coverage requirements for our students with special needs. The success of these efforts depends on our ability to attract candidates and move them through the hiring process efficiently. Yard preparedness is key to a successful reopening. TransDev leadership is accountable for completing a rigorous reopening checklist to ensure that all vehicles pass maintenance and safety checks. Operational personnel are trained, prepared, and additional staff on the ground at the 3 yards to mitigate any operation issues that may arise during the first few days of school. In conjunction with this work, TransDev also runs the fall driver's bid, where drivers select routes and coordinates dry runs to minimize operational issues on the first day. We communicate bus assignments and protocols to families and schools and provide customer service support via our transportation hotline, chat, and support portal to provide a high level of service. It's important to ensure the customer service team has adequate staffing, including multilingual support. Just as important is proactive outreach to families to ensure they have their bus assignments and understand how to request any changes to their child's transportation assignment. Next slide. I will now review the challenges faced this year, mitigation steps taken, and long-term improvement plans along each of the key elements just discussed. As mentioned on slide 5, timely and accurate student data is essential to a successful start of the school year. Our biggest challenge this year was late and incorrect student enrollment data, particularly for non-BPS students and students who were dually enrolled in both a BPS and a charter school. We also received late IEP and 504 plan data for some students with special needs that has a disproportionate impact on routing and fleet scheduling, such as door-to-door and monitor requirement. We engaged in collaboration across departments in the spring of 2021 to share and agree upon timelines for receiving student data, as well as provided reminders throughout the summer. This was used to project routing as well as driver and monitor staffing needs. In August, issues in the student data for routing were discovered. After those issues surfaced, cross-departmental check-ins were employed to rectify the issues as quickly as possible. Ultimately, these issues delayed routing work and led to insufficient routes. As we look ahead to future years, we have reimagined the management of non-BPS enrollment data, given its centrality to our operation. A dedicated transportation staff will oversee the timely transfer of non-BPS enrollment data from Welcome Services. Student assignment and special education. We are also taking other steps to improve cross-department collaboration and ensure accountability and timeliness for receiving data. The delays in student data discussed on the previous slide led to delays in completing routing work and shortened the window to optimize routes and increase efficiency necessary to hit projected routing targets. In addition, our department experienced a lengthy delay in receiving district approval to contract our fleet scheduler. Due to unforeseen delays in the multi-step approval process, the contractor was ultimately not cleared to start work until August 6th, more than 3 weeks later than the intended start date. This led to significantly shortened window for fleet consolidation work, which resulted in 25 more scheduled buses than anticipated in the total fleet at the start of school. These delays also resulted in a delayed driver's bid, reducing the amount of time for drivers to complete dry runs. The department had planned to maximize the routing teams in office time in early summer and for the contractor to start fleet scheduling and consolidation work early. However, as a result of these delays, we had to continue fleet consolidation work throughout September and early October. Ultimately, we removed 28 buses from the fleet since the start of school through more efficient routing and fleet consolidation. We now have 621 total buses in the fleet, in line with initial projected needs. Looking forward, there's now clear alignment across the operations department and district-wide regarding the importance of the timeliness that must be met to ensure that transportation has time to complete necessary routing and fleet consolidation work. The transportation team is also taking steps internally to strengthen our routing capabilities. We have recently hired a new data analyst who will train in fleet scheduling to remove our reliance on an outside contractor for scheduling. Our contractor TransDev was aware and started planning early summer after the emergence of a national driver shortage. The team planned to hire as many drivers as they could to ensure students received the services they needed, and has hired 42 drivers since June. Although TransDev has seen greater success than many other school districts in hiring drivers, due to the market challenges in hiring and a higher than anticipated number of drivers on leave, TransDev was nonetheless short at the start of the school year. Since the start of school, TransDev has increased the number of active drivers from 664 to 681, somewhat mitigating the gaps, and continues to hire to fill 33 remaining positions. Our focus starting in the summer was to hire an additional 150 bus monitors to provide proper coverage for our students who require a monitor while being transported. We have experienced significant recruitment and hiring challenges that have resulted in the district falling very short of this goal. To overcome these challenges, we engage in a multi-pronged recruitment efforts with prioritizing students with IEPs to receive monitors for school start. Our hiring process are still underway, with 81 individuals having been submitted for hire since the start of school, and 16 presently cleared to start work. Though there were many challenges this year that could have affected yard preparedness, TransDev worked diligently to proactively address these issues well before it could negatively impact the operation. Despite the ongoing supply shortages due to the pandemic, TransDev was able to identify and order supplies ahead of time. Though there were frequent changes to timelines and data, TransDev maintained close communication both internally and externally, and successfully accommodated new timelines and data in order to proactively address historical issues with GPS units. Transdev increased their focus on bus GPS health. In addition, they prepared for start of school operation needs by arranging for Transdev corporate and operation personnel to be on the ground and assisting during the start of school. Overall, the steps taken in terms of yard preparedness and communications help lessen the impact and stress of late assignment data on the overall operation. I will now turn it over to Daniel Rosengard, our Assistant Director of Customer Relation and School Support Services.
Thank you, Delaverne. As mentioned, my name is Dan Rosengard, Assistant Director of Customer Relations and School Support for BPS Transportation. In this role, I oversee the BPS operations and customer service teams responsible for working with the bus yards and communicating with schools and families on a day-to-day basis. In this next section, I'm going to present a review of transportation performance from the start of this school year, with a focus on customer service, bus on-time performance, and two of our most significant operational challenges. Next slide, please. Knowing how essential transportation is to students' access to education, as well as the challenges that often surround transportation at the start of the school year, we know that customer service and communications is critical to providing students, families, and schools with the necessary level of support. There are a number of factors to effective communications and customer service. First is making sure that families have their bus assignments and schedules and understand transportation processes. Before the start of the school year, we sent transportation mailers, which included bus assignments and key bus protocols, to all families via mail and email. Starting in 2020, these mailers have been translated into families' preferred home languages. We also have a website and online support portal where parents can find information on policies and FAQs. Over the past year, as health and safety protocols have been rapidly evolving, we have used this space to provide the latest up-to-date information to families and schools. Second is making sure that families and schools have the ability to reach a transportation staff member in a timely manner to resolve real-time bus issues. Every year, we hire and train additional temporary customer service staff to support families during the start of the school year. We also enlist the help of additional in-office staff to support families during our busiest times on the first 2 days. This year, our hotline wait time averaged 8 minutes and 40 seconds on the first 2 days of school, and 8 minutes and 15 seconds for the month of September. This represents a significant improvement on the average over SY16 through SY20, when average hotline wait times were 14 minutes and 5 seconds during the first week and just under 12 minutes for the month of September. For the full school year, we target an average wait time of under 2 minutes, which we have been able to accomplish so far in October of this year. Finally, we are working to increase accessibility for families through adding new communication channels that will provide equitable access to all families. In November of 2020, we added an online chat feature which families can use in lieu of calling. Since we added this feature, over 1,000 families have reached out to us through the chat. At the same time, we added an online support portal where families can submit transportation change requests or other tickets, which are then routed to the correct staff member for follow-up. Nearly 20% of our interactions with families now come through the support portal, which allows families to submit requests without needing to call and improves accountability from our team to meet service level agreements for response times. Last spring, working with our IT team, we added Spanish language queuing to our hotline, allowing Spanish speakers to be directly connected to a staff member in their preferred language. And approximately 15% of inbound calls now come in through our Spanish queue. Finally, we know that the bus tracking app has historically been inconsistent. Specifically, when bus routes were being run in a different bus number than normal, the app did not track the correct bus. In September of this year, our IT team introduced new capabilities which allow us to update covering bus numbers for individual runs and allow parents to track the covering bus in more cases. We have also worked closely with TransDev to ensure a renewed focus on GPS health on all our buses. We deeply understand the importance of proactive, accessible, and equitable communications, and will continue to focus on reducing wait times and increasing language accessibility for BPS families. Next slide, please. The key measure of the success of our operation is Bus On-Time Performance, or OTP, which measures the percentage of buses arriving to school before the bell time. There are a number of factors which we know create bus delays on the first 2 days of school. These include drivers running new routes, parents and school staff meeting drivers and monitors for the first time, and a larger than normal number of buses that don't yet have a regularly assigned driver and therefore need to go through the daily standby bid process to identify a driver for that day. From school year 14 to SY20, the transportation operation averaged 63% OTP to schools in the morning on the first 2 days of school. This year, 69% of buses arrived on time to school on the first 2 days, a 6% increase over that prior time period and the best performance in the last 8 years. Additionally, 91% of buses arrived within 15 minutes of the start of school, and 98% arrived within 30 minutes on the first 2 days. Although we know we are not yet where we need to be, we have made significant sustained improvements over the past 2 years and will continue to work towards our target goal of 80% average bus on-time performance on the first 2 days of school. Next slide, please. When we look at the full month of September, rather than just the first 2 days, we have seen similar improvements. From SY14 to SY20, the transportation operation averaged 81% bus on-time performance to schools in the morning for the full month of September. This September, we averaged 85% bus OTP. Additionally, 97% of buses arrived within 15 minutes of the start of school, and 99% arrived within 30 minutes for the month of September. These improvements have been driven by improved routing to correct route issues identified at the start of school, collaboration with schools to ensure safe and efficient bus unloading procedures during arrivals, and most significantly, collaboration with TransDev, yard-based personnel, and our drivers to improve yard operations to ensure buses are leaving the yard on time. So far in October this year, we're averaging 91% on-time performance, and we continue to work towards our target goal of greater than 92% bus on-time performance on a daily basis. Next slide, please. I now want to discuss what we know is one of our most critical operational challenges, namely uncovered trips. An uncovered trip occurs when there is not a driver available to run a bus route at its scheduled time. We recognize that when this occurs, it has a disproportionately negative impact on students and families, particularly our most vulnerable. And so we must do everything we can to minimize and eliminate these. Prior to the start of school this year, BPS communicated to families, schools, and the public that we anticipated not having enough drivers for all scheduled bus routes when BPS began the school year. This was the result of three main factors. First, due to the incomplete fleet consolidation work discussed earlier, we had 25 more buses than anticipated assigned daily work at the start of the school year. Second, due to the challenges discussed with driver hiring and leaves discussed earlier, in Boston, we were more than 25 drivers short of originally projected driver needs at the start of the school year. So what this really boils down to is we had 25 fewer drivers and 25 more buses than we would have liked on the road at the start of the school year. Although we had enough drivers to run all bus routes as scheduled, if all drivers showed up to work, we had little to no buffer in the system. And so with uncertain driver attendance, we knew that we would likely not have enough drivers for all scheduled routes at the start of the school year. Each morning, any bus whose driver is not in that day goes through the daily standby bid process. This is a contractually obligated process where available standby drivers can select their work for the day in seniority order. In the case where there are not enough standby drivers available to cover all open runs that day, any runs which are not selected by a standby driver are then uncovered. The list of uncovered runs is available when the standby bid ends, typically around 6 a.m. At that time, BPS immediately takes the following steps. First, we communicate to families through a robocall and text message, and we communicate to schools through calling school staff to inform them that there is not a driver available at the time. We then work with yard staff to identify a different driver who can cover the trip, for instance, by combining 2 trips together or by enlisting the assistance of a driver once they complete their normally assigned work to run the uncovered trip late. If and when a driver is identified to run the route, we then send follow-up communications to families and schools. In addition, we provide backup buses as available to take students to school if their stop was missed or their trip was not run. In the afternoon, a similar process occurs. The afternoon standby bid ends between 1 to 1:30 p.m. daily, and then we follow a similar communication and operations process to try to cover afternoon trips. In addition, BPS has provided schools with funds that they can use to stipend administrative team members who stay late with students while waiting for the bus. And in all cases, we ensure that all students who need a bus ride home have one by identifying drivers to run the trips late if necessary. Since this challenge was identified, we have been working to reduce and ultimately eliminate uncovered trips by addressing the root causes. We have reduced the number of buses needed daily by 28 since the start of school through more efficient routing and opting out students whose families confirm they do not need the bus. TransDev continues working to hire drivers. 42 drivers have been hired since June. However, there remain 33 open positions due to ongoing market challenges. And we continue working with TransDev and our drivers to ensure consistent driver attendance, clearer communications when there will be absences, and supporting drivers when appropriate and coming back from leave. Despite all efforts, we know that a small percentage of students have been negatively impacted this year by not having a driver. We own that we have failed too many of our students this year. At this time, our daily operation can run with all trips covered at average driver attendance levels with a small amount of buffer. However, we must and will continue working to address the underlying causes in order to add additional buffer into the system and ensure that we fully address this challenge for future school years. I will now hand off to my colleague, Varsha Ramsey, for a deep dive on monitor shortages.
Hello, thank you all for having me here today. My name is Varsha Ramsey, and I am the Special Assistant of the Director of Transportation. I will now take you through one of our biggest operational challenges, which is the shortage of bus monitors. Our bus monitors provide a service that is integral to the safe transportation of our students with the highest needs. If there is no monitor present on a bus, drivers are not contractually obligated to pick up a student that requires a monitor. As a department and as a district, we acknowledge that the monitor staffing issue has negatively impacted special needs students at a disproportionate rate in regards to consistent and reliable access to education. The district's goal is for students with special needs to be supported by tenured, experienced, and fairly compensated monitors. However, the reality of the situation at hand is that the average monitor is paid $24.22 for a run and typically completes 3 runs per day. The average annualized pay for a bus monitor is approximately $18,000 a year. Depending on their choice of package of runs, most monitors are not eligible for health insurance. Due to this fact, and taking into account the financial stress of the pandemic and its impact on the job market, recruitment, and retention of the monitor workforce has been challenging. The monitors that are submitted for hire often need assistance gathering and submitting documentation before they can be fully processed and begin working. We are still collaborating with the Office of Human Capital to solve for this inefficiency in the hiring process of monitors and envisioning a system that better supports the hiring of this population in particular. In the meantime, we are dedicated to rapidly screening, interviewing, and submitting candidates for hire alongside the recruitment, cultivation, and diversity team's efforts in garnering more interest for this role. This summer, we submitted 41 monitors for hire, with 26 of them officially hired. Since the start of the school, we submitted 81 monitors for hire, with now 18 of those candidates officially hired at present. To expedite this process and have these monitors supporting the students on these buses as soon as possible, we continue to schedule sessions with candidates submitted for hire, during which we assist in the uploading necessary documentation required to process them as official hires. Regardless of the challenges and circumstances we are currently facing, we are actively taking steps to provide more reliable coverage for the high-need students that are entitled to these supports. While we are continuously working towards longer-term sustainable solutions to alleviate coverage issues, our customer service team, operations coordinators, monitors unit, and bus yards worked together during the start of this school to communicate daily, identifying where coverage was needed for both AM pickups and PM drop-offs. In real time, they were able to arrange backup buses, transport monitors to schools, consolidate routes, and communicate with families. We fully utilized the resources we did have at our disposal to best lessen the negative impact felt by students with special needs. Despite all of our efforts, we know that we fell far short of providing students with the level of support that they deserve. We need to do more. We are continuing to work with our monitors unit and union and district partners as we review and reimagine how we cultivate and retain this workforce and structure their work. I would like to pass it back to my director, Delaver and Stanislaus, to summarize plans for continued improvement.
Thank you, Varsha. The transportation team is dedicated to working on long-term sustainable solutions, both internally, cross-departmentally, and in collaboration with other stakeholders to mitigate some of the issues that arose this school year. A position was shifted to our department to oversee management of non-BPS enrollment. We now have a new hire internally that will oversee all fleeting and scheduling, which will remove the reliance on a scheduler in the future. Our team will continue to focus on workforce retention, management, and accurate forecasting for both our drivers and monitors. We will continue to improve data-driven monthly performance reviews with our contractor and refining our communications while expanding multilingual support to our parents and families. I would like to say thank you to the transportation team who showed up and worked extremely hard despite all of the adversity faced this past summer. You all leaned in and executed the work in a not so favorable situation. To the parents and families in the city of Boston, your voices are heard. We are not where we need to be until every student has access to safe, reliable, on-time transportation. Access to quality education is our department's primary goal. I will continue to work with the transportation team to improve the transportation operation in both the short and long term. Thank you.
Councillor Sabi George, I have several questions, if it's okay if I just went through them, or I didn't know if you had.
I was just waiting for the screen to clear. No, I'm happy to turn it over to you for questions, Councillor Edwards. And thank you to the Boston Public Schools team for that very thorough presentation. I'm assuming it's in my inbox as well as council colleagues, that presentation. Yes.
That's right, Madam Chair. I sent it out.
Thank you. Thank you, Shane. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much. I wanted to first start with when it comes to the recruitment, maybe this is the first time I've heard this. I didn't realize bus monitors were only paid $18,000 a year. And so, I mean, I know you have a deep dive, but do we have to go that deep to figure out why it's hard to recruit people for $18,000 a year with a Boston residency requirement? Every year, BPS submits a budget. Has there been regular increases in those salaries for the budgets? Was there one even this past year? I can predict that your recruitment's going to be even harder if there isn't one proposed for this up and coming year. And then also, is there any way to supplement? Can you pay some parents, or is there another place to recruit to help pay for on daily wages for bus monitors? That's my first question.
Yes, so recruitment has been quite difficult. And as you said, the $18,000 a year, no wonder. That with the limited eligibility for health benefits as well presents an issue, it presents a challenge. We're currently bargaining with our monitors union, and that contract expired in June. So we are currently working to come to an agreement with them in which we, as we said, reimagine exactly the value of the labor that we do, that the value of the labor that they provide for the district. We do have done a new strategy this year, not just this year, but we found that our lunch monitors and paras often do sort of double sometimes as a one-to-one for a student. So we have connected with Food and Nutrition Services and are working towards combining our hiring pool to see where exactly we can provide that additional coverage for students.
Okay. And you're in the middle of negotiating. Is one of the asks an increase in pay from the Boston monitors? Okay. What is that increase they're seeking?
I don't think we can get into the bargaining conversations that we're in right now, Counselor, but happy to loop back on some of those conversations. And I do want to just echo what Varsha said about really trying to reimagine these positions. I think that we've learned from this pandemic and, we have this shortage now. And so how are we thinking about these jobs differently? Not only are they, bus monitors, but what other components of the team can they be part of? What does their pay structure actually look like? One of the things that we have talked to some of them about is the salary that they're making allows them to receive other benefits, right? And so actually increasing their salaries. Some of them, have questions about what that would mean for other benefits that they receive. So it's complex, but we are certainly engaging in that. And the superintendent's very committed to that. And she's also talked to the city about the residency requirement with such a low salary as well. So those are all things that we're talking through with them now.
Excellent. I mean, I do hope, I would love to know that we can hire Boston residents. I know, I was a bus monitor as a kid, like an older high school kid, to help out with the younger kids. So I don't know if that's a way to have youth jobs or a youth component to BPS. I'm not sure. The standards obviously have changed a great deal in terms of who will, have with our kids and under what standards and what training. But I do hope that that there's an immediate increase in that salary. It's below poverty wages, honestly.
A good conversation for us to have during budget season. For sure.
Yeah.
When we come before the council.
But we'll put a pin in it then, won't we? And then I wanted to just discuss, what is your response to kids on when they do miss? So what happens, right? So we have a child, they miss the bus or the bus doesn't get them. And then what? What are the wraparound recourses and, not so much reimbursement, but how do we compensate for this? So they missed school because the bus isn't there. How are those families being offered or provided with, compensatory services? Are we had issue with breakfast, for example. So you can start there. They missed breakfast. What do we do there? And then if they miss the whole day of school, how are we fixing that? We're not punishing them, I hope, for, missing school. So talk to me about that.
Thank you for that question, Counselor. So I can start by talking about what we do in terms of missed stops or missed runs due to coverage issues, and then can hand off to Delaverne to talk a little bit about the compensatory services piece of it. So as mentioned, we get that list of any uncovered runs daily and then work kind of on the fly to both communicate proactively to families and to arrange coverage in as many cases as possible. One thing that we do offer is when families call in to let us know, hey, I don't have another way to get my student to school, we will arrange backup buses as they become available to go and pick up those individual students and take them to school, even if we're not running the full trip necessarily. So those families who do reach out, we provide those backup buses to get them to school. So that's kind of one thing that we do. We also, are monitoring coverage trends over time and making sure that, students are not disproportionately impacted if one bus is having kind of consistent coverage issues over time. So that's another thing that we attempt to do. And then Delaverne, would you like to talk about the compensatory services piece?
Yep, I would like to jump in and discuss the compensatory services piece. One thing I wanted to tack on the end of what Dan said, however, and for us to note is that when we work on backup buses, a lot of times, so the families that we're working with across the district, right, they are working families. So our backup buses at times can inconvenience a lot of our families because we are deploying the backup buses after the students assigned pickup times. So I just wanted to make sure that we named that. Second, Counselor, to your question about compensatory services and penalizing students. So our students are not penalized because of our buses when our buses don't show up and or sometimes shows up extremely late to pick up and anchor at schools after the arrival time. In terms of compensatory services, we have worked with the Office of Special Education, and this past summer, we were able to support families. We provide buses and supported families with compensatory services. I know that the special education team worked with families. We worked with schools, kept a few schools open, and had teachers at schools this summer that provide compensatory services to families. To our special education families, I know that our special education families who are missing services during this time, they are working with the special education team for the special education team to set up compensatory services. If families need access to transportation during those times, we do provide transportation for those kids to get access to those services.
Do you also talk to me about the wraparound services or the compensation services for kids with IEPs who miss school, which I think they would have to be different. I mean, legally, right?
And then Counselor Edwards, after Dell or whoever answers that question, one person who has signed up for public testimony is in our wait room. So I'm going to switch to that individual and then come back to you. Also, thank you. Thank you, Counselor Edwards. Sorry to interrupt you, Delburn.
No problem. Thanks for that question, Counselor Edwards. So when students, so on the special education side, when students who get to school late and or a bus does not show up and the student cannot access school, there's the special education team at the school and or a COSE at the school will work in collaboration with the special education department on time. So over the summer, either during February or April vacation, or a time that works for the parents and the school to accommodate those students to receive the services that was missed due to transportation.
Thank you, Delburn. I do have two participants that are listed as attendees, Sulika Soto and Betsy Yohimura. And Betsy has declined to be brought in, although I had her listed for public testimony. So if you would like to, Betsy, please raise your hand. And then it looks like we've lost, Ms. Soto is joining us. So Sulika, when you're ready, please join us and offer some testimony.
Yes. Hi. My internet's kind of botchy. Is it okay if I keep my video off?
It is totally fine. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you. I didn't really prepare much for this, but I am so my name is Suleika Soto. I am a BPS parent. I am a parent advocate as well. And I am here today to express a little bit of my concerns and some of the concerns that I've been hearing from parents in the BPS community about what is really going on with transportation. I think that one of the biggest problems that I have seen, I mean, till this day, even yesterday, parents are still receiving messages at around 1 p.m. in the afternoon that their schools, that there's not a driver for their schools. They have to make changes to their schedule. They have to find a way. They have to leave work. They're risking their jobs. They have to leave work in the middle of the day. They have to look for alternate ways to, they leave, thinking that hopefully it's a normal day. I think that it is ridiculous that, we could sit here and apologize for these things. It's been 2 years of a crazy pandemic. There's been a lot of, we've all been going through a really hard time, especially students and parents, with the constant changes and the constant, things that we're having to deal with last minute. I think that there's a lot of creative things that we can do, right? Like there are places that are, other cities that are compensating parents $300 a month if they decide to bring their kids into school, like, drop them off and pick them up. There could be some sort of like carpooling ideas. Like I think that there should be some urgent, some urgency in trying to fix these problems. It's been 2 months. And then when we go to school committee meetings, and again, with the school bus monitors, there's a bullying problem. And there's other problems that go on. I mean, bus drivers, it's hard for me to drive with my child in the back seat, let alone a bus driver who is, driving with, I don't know how many kids in the back who are all, antsy. So, I think it's unacceptable. I don't know what BPS has done to work with the bus drivers union. I know that the Boston Education Justice Alliance had a community meeting where the bus drivers union person was there, and he himself did not even have a route for his child. And that was 1 month into this. There's no bus, it's just, I think it's unacceptable. I know that ESSER funds, part of it is to remediate for the effects of the pandemic. I think that the lack of bus drivers are an effect of the pandemic. I think that there should be creative ways to compensate parents, and I'm glad that they're doing the stipends for the teachers. I think that it also just, the trust is not there between parents and BPS, and because when I know Ms. Stanaslis, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, you just got an award for safety, but then I hear from parents that their children are getting our kids are coming out traumatized, from their school bus rides. The same thing with the mother in East Boston. That's it's a safety issue, is a trauma issue. And then again, they sit there and they say that this is the best year for transportation. I don't know how that cultivates trust. It is not the same thing that is happening on the ground with parents and with parents and students. It's just too much for parents. And I think there needs to be creative ways. I mean, can BPS maybe connect with the DTA, right? I know that the DTA for certain benefits has like a work requirement. I mean, either, connect with them or, pay parent stipends, try to come up with some carpool plan, work with the union's president, who has been doing this work for years to try to plan the routing. And I think that this is another year of learning, and we should definitely do better. There should have been a better plan.
Suleika, thank you very much for your testimony this afternoon. Betsy, I know, doesn't want to join us for public testimony, and I don't see any other individuals signed up for testimony in the waiting room. So Councillor Edwards, I'll return this back to you, and I actually will turn the gavel over to you as well to wrap up this hearing, if that's okay. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I apologize that I do have to leave at this hour.
You're muted, Councillor.
Councillor Edwards, this is for you now.
Thank you. I was saying thank you, Chair Asabi George, for hosting this, and I appreciate you giving an hour. I know you have a lot on your plate, so I'm just going to go ahead. I'll take the gavel and continue on with some questions. So we were discussing the IEP plans for compensatory services, and then you had just answered that. And so there was another question about breakfast. Now, I've had students miss breakfast when their buses had missed. So talk to me, is there a system-wide plan for kids getting food, or is it based off of each school?
Unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that question. However, I can get right back to you on an answer to that question.
Yeah, I think that I was going to say we can ask our food services team to follow up on that. And Chief Alvarez, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
Yes, I know that one of the things that we do with food services is that every kid, despite of what school they're in, are eligible for a meal. As far as the detail, and this is a really good important point, and when you mentioned it immediately, I started taking notes. I am going to definitely get a response back to you, if not while we're here, pretty soon, as to what happens that kid. And I'm sorry, my voice is not there.
No, and I appreciate the urgency in getting that. I appreciate that BPS wants to have the answer to that. I don't think this is a matter of you, whatever, but you do know. And I do appreciate, you with your new kitchens and the retrofitting and making sure people have healthy meals. It's been a priority for BPS. This is when the kid is missing the breakfast time. I know for some of my teachers in East Boston, and for some of the kids that I've had, their teachers keep some of the breakfast in the classroom. And so if the student is late, but if there was it would be more comforting, I'm sure, for all of us, if we just knew what the system plan was, no matter who, if they're late, breakfast is still served, or there's a place for them to get some. And that there are 4,000 or so kids who experience homelessness in our system. We know that there's a wide gap in income. And so that's something that we all are going to prioritize. So thank you for that. I wanted to make sure I was clear also on the working group. I had asked about the working group. Were there any updates about the BPS bus working group?
Sure. I can take that one, Counselor. This is something that, as we're seeing here, and we've certainly seen the great work that Dell and her team have done, and we've seen progress, but we know there is still a lot more work to be done. And so the superintendent really believes in bringing everybody to the table. The union, our union partners, our assignment experts and inside BPS here, different advocacy groups, parents, students, really putting everybody at the table that has a stake in this. And in reality, I think every resident of Boston could be at that table to talk about some of the big challenges that we're facing and to really talk about solutions together. This is complex stuff. And I know that there's a lot of reasons why some of these challenges persist. And so this is really about the transparency of having those conversations so that we can all understand the complexity of it and try to problem solve together. So the superintendent brought the idea of the working group to the school committee a couple weeks ago. We are in the stages of finalizing who's going to be on that working group. We definitely have sort of the categories, right? So a lot of the internal departments that will be part of it here, some of the parent groups, student groups, advocacy groups, and those will be open meetings so that people can watch those and participate in them. There'll be public comment period to it. I really think that this is about, I mean, even here, right, hearing from, Ms. Soto, this is the real life that people are experiencing, right? And we can certainly look at the great work that we are doing and understand that, 90%, 98%, those are good numbers, but that still means that there are people out there. And we know that the superintendent is always striving for 100%. And so we need to make sure that everybody's at the table so that we can solve these problems together and know that we're not going to be perfect every single day, but this team is really committed to striving towards that.
Thank you. You brought up the backup bus system, and I'm just wondering, this is kind of a combination question. I know that you have the website for bus tracking. Is there any movement with Do It or with BPS's IT to move that to an app? And if there is, or could there be, and then also the backup bus system is a little confusing to me, especially if I'm the kid and my parents have already gone to work. So if they've already gone to work and I'm there waiting and the bus doesn't come and I'm, I call my parents, who then would call the backup system to come and get me? Or are we just seems like there might be a delta in that action. I mean, if the bus doesn't come, I don't go. I mean, not everybody can have their parents wait with them until the bus gets there. Sometimes it's like, one parent, several kids. So how does this backup system work? There's no parents there.
Thank you, Counselor. I think I can take both pieces of that question. So in terms of the Where's My School Bus website, we continue to work with our OIIT team to make improvements there. We've made some, I think, fairly significant capability improvements so far this year in terms of them adding that capability for us to be able to put in when a different bus number is covering the trip and allow parents to track there. But we know that it's not perfect yet. And so we're continuing, we're going to continue discussions there on additional improvements that can be made. So I think that was your first question. And then around backup buses. So the way that system works is if your bus stop was missed or your trip was not run, you can call into our transportation hotline, 617-635-9520, to talk to a customer service or operations staff member. And they'll, once we verify that the stop was missed, we will then, if you need it, and, of course, upon availability, which I think Dell is absolutely right when she mentioned that, these happen later in the morning, so it can be inconvenient for families and is not a perfect system. I think we need to acknowledge that it's not a perfect system, but we would work to arrange a bus to be sent to the home address and pick up the student and bring them to school later in the morning when that bus is available.
Well, I hope that the working group will really deal with that backup system, our backup bus system, a little bit more to make it more efficient. I still don't know how, if a kid's parents are already at work, how they are going to, if they don't know necessarily that they're about to miss it, right? The bus doesn't come. Then they report that the bus was missed them. And then that goes to the system, and then they're trying to get a backup bus. And I appreciate both you, Dan, and Delver, acknowledging that the system is in growth. I'll say that, right? It does have room for improvement. So this is not an attack. It's more, maybe these were suggestions. One, can we get it to be an app one day so that people have it on their cell phone and they can track their bus from work, so that they're not everyone gets access to, there are people who are essential workers. There are people who work in grocery stores. There are parents who work everywhere. Not everyone has access to a computer to know where the bus is. So that's one thing, at least being able to access it on an app. And then two, if there's any way for us to combine some of the suggestions, I think one of our public speakers had either there's groups of parents or there's backup systems that, school communities can create that allow for people to help each other out. I think it forms community. I think it forms cohesion of folks in schools, and, not trying to exasperate, obviously, inequities, because, we don't want one school system to have a whole backup system to transport their kids and another school doesn't. But, it's a real concern. I think for all of us, this is not a us versus them. This is a real concern for all of us. And I do hope that the priorities are increasing the salaries of the bus monitors and really coming up with a backup system, because you're moving 60,000 people, kids,
22,000 students.
22,000. And I know you're striving for 100%. I know also the likelihood of 100% is just unlikely, even in the best of circumstances. So the question is, what's your plan B? What's our strongest plan B? And I'd love to be part of those conversations to help with the plan B, especially for us across the harbor in East Boston. It does make a huge difference, especially when we go to school, out of East Boston. I don't want to belabor anything. I feel that people are here trying to do better. And I feel that there are, you walk through where the deltas were. And I really appreciate that transparency. I really do. You acknowledge this is why this is probably happening. And that's real. And I appreciate that genuinely. So I don't have any more questions, I promise. It's over with. Unless you have any questions or statements that you would like to say as BPS on this particular topic, I don't want to belabor this, and I'll check our public testimony to see if there's any folks who want to continue or want to ask questions. It looks like no. So I think the only thing that would be immediate for me is your backup plan for kids who miss breakfast. The other plans will probably be conversations for budget and also for the working group. But I I really would appreciate what happens when they miss breakfast as soon as possible.
Thank you, Councilor. And I'm going to have Della Byrne close us out, but I just wanted to publicly say that the transportation team have done an awesome job to work above and beyond. This is not a 9-to-5 team. This is a team that starts really, really early in the morning and don't stop until the work is done. And they're completely committed to getting the work done for every single one of our kids. And although we see that 100% is unlikely, we're definitely aiming for it and get as close as possible as we can. But I do appreciate you guys putting this together and having us here today, and I will turn it over to Del.
Thanks, Indy. One of the things I just want to reiterate is that the transportation team is committed to improving the quality of access to education to the students in the city of Boston. I would like families to know that, I know I've heard families, this team have heard from families every single day, and we are working diligently to ensure, right, that we are trying to build sustainable structure within the department to ensure access for our students in the city of Boston. Counselor, I look forward to working with you and other folks on the council and other folks in the city of Boston, and also our parents and families, right? Hearing it from our parents and families, having our parents and families at the table is very important while we work through building a sustainable structure for students. I also just want to say to the transportation team, I continue to just be happy daily that I have this team supporting the students of the city of Boston. This team is up 4:30 in the morning and until the work ends, whatever time at night, we all pull together to support. So I just wanted to shout that out as well. But like I said, parents and families, we hear you. We are working diligently to ensure quality access to education.
Thank you all. Without further comments, we're going to go ahead and end today's hearing on school busing, and we will look forward any feedback. This is to the folks who are watching or who will watch. Any feedback or answers that we receive, including the deck that we received from BPS, is part of the public record, and we will make it readily available to anybody who requests as well. So thank you all for coming today. Goodbye.
Thank you.